Yeah. So Chairwoman Mace, I thought did a good job, and she did a good job hosting it and getting that ready. So I did think that she did a good job. And a good point that was brought up was Arrow and all of the money that they're using, and then saying that they don't have these projects. So it was a good fact of then what money are we sending to you if you're not doing any projects? If you're saying you're not doing anything, then what money are you using? What is this for then? And there's no they have no rhyme or reason to what they're using this money for. So I find that very fascinating too. And then also hearing about, they're using these hangars. They have hangars that are being rented out, but they don't know why they're using them. So, I don't know if you want to go into a little bit more, but, I found that interesting too.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and a few things on there were opposing for what they were saying. They ain't us. We don't know. Are they China? They Chinese. They ain't us. We need more funding. And I was laughing through some of it, but we can say this goes back. And they're saying the fifth. They mentioned it in the 50s, which would be the Roswell crash. We could say it goes all the way back. Ancient Egyptians. Hey Sharon, and we can say it goes back to the Mayans, the Sumerians. Even in the Bible, this stuff's mentioned. But let's bring it back to so-called modern time. And we can take this back to the World War, man. We can take this back to Mussolini. We can take this back to Hitler, which they certainly had a down craft, which Tim Tactics shared with us on the Agra meeting. I'm sure even Grush has mentioned this after Tim mentioned it to us, actually, in the last hearing. So this goes back to when they've been re-engineering and having this. This goes back to Germany. But in America, man, we all heard of Roswell in Corona and New Mexico, where they crashed, and they were the Ebens. And from this point, so I'll give them some due. So you imagine we come out of a world war, we're heading into a cold war, and we are a warrior type species on the mindset of war. And then suddenly we find these beings from other places. And even Churchill, and in the World War II on the English side, they spoke about the so-called faux fires, which were these orbs that were flying around. And even Churchill said after the war, we'll leave this to the Americans. So this goes back a long, long time. And so when these crafts went down in Roswell, they've been re-engineering them. And part of that is these so-called black projects. Yeah, so that's part of it. But also where they got around not telling the public in America was to give it out to corporations. So they gave these materials and things to corporations through government contracts, which cuts the ties of the laws that they don't have to share it. And then they can release these things like Vicro was one, infrared was one, fiber optics was one, and they can release these microchips, all this stuff, but then they give it back to the government. So they've been re-engineering these, and they're going, they ain't ours, and we ain't got nothing like this. I would spit out a few letters and numbers to everyone here, and probably most of you have heard of this. TR3B. That is American made, and that was built out in the 70s. They've got an upgraded version of this. So I mean, they're probably stuck on their national national security and things like this. They can only spread so much of it. But many of us know, man. I was watching it live on X, and the people in the feed, man, they know that we know what's going on. And I could have certainly given some answers to some of the questions that were coming up they couldn't answer. Though I would say it's such a beautiful thing to see it in the public eye. And this is preparing the consciousness, man, for up and coming times. It's preparing, it's putting them little seeds into your average Joe, the person that's just probably working on their family, in their family units, doing their jobs, haven't had experiences. And why wouldn't you trust the government, right? When I think now we're hitting a point where people are going, hang on. But why wouldn't you, So, yeah, I found it a fascinating talk. But, I mean, there's a couple of things that kind of trigger me. Is one thing is this, I can see an agenda playing out, which is sorry, I lost my thought there, Sky, which is they're a threat, right? So they're a threat and we need more funding. I heard this a couple of times and I almost laughed. So they're going,